The anime begins with a group of people annihilating a dragon, where this one mentions that he does not remember having done anything for humans to wish to kill him. On some occasions, he even went to his companion. But anyway, in the end, human avarice knows no limits and the dragon accepts his fate. Although this is a rather inappropriate ending for a divine celestial dragon, he asks the gods of death to take his soul to the underworld, so that in this way he may rest eternally. However, by irony of life, upon dying, the dragon is reborn with a new life. His parents rejoice upon seeing him and name him Dolan, while at the same time they introduce him to his older brother. And so the years passed, and now we meet our hero, who watches the horizon in fascination. The little Eri asks him if he is alright, although he merely replies that everything is perfectly fine, and they return to the village. We then discover that the village is called Veyron, and it is located on the northern border of the kingdom of Arx. Dolan, our hero, is the reincarnation of the divine celestial dragon, who by some whim of destiny ended up being reborn as a human. Every day he goes out to the fields to earn a living as a common villager. In this world, at the age of 15, children are already considered adults, and it is expected that they become independent at that age. And since Dolan is 16, he is currently living alone. One day, while fishing, his brother Dylan asks him if he is going to investigate the swamp. He states that yes, since the lizards disappeared from the swamp a month ago, and they need to resolve this matter. However, Dylan, his brother, recommends that he let the garrison handle it, because it can be quite dangerous. Although Dolan replies that Captain Valen and the others already have much to do protecting the village. And after a productive day of fishing, they return to the village, where they gather with their companions. They mention that he should prepare for the following day, although he already informs them that he has already prepared, and that it helped him greatly to have met the village chief and the rest of the people. Melina replies that he always helps with the training, so it was the least she could do for him. Dolan asks if, by any chance, they are going out. Albert replies that they will attend a meeting about the training of the youngsters, and asks him not to worry about them. The best thing to do is to focus on his event, and after that, Dolan goes to his house to prepare the fish. As Verum is not a city, it does not have soldiers to protect the villagers, and worst of all is that it is surrounded by monsters and bandits. At that moment, Air knocks on his window and reminds him that that day they have magic practice, and then they gather with the Elder. There, Dolan shows his enormous talent with attack magic, although the Elder mentions that he should practice sound magic, which is not his strong point. Soon after, later on, at dusk, Dolan watches a female knight. The village chief takes the opportunity to introduce Christiana to him, and informs him that she will stay in the village for quite some time, and asks him to behave properly, because she is a young aristocrat. Christina introduces herself to Dolan, and as they shake hands, both stare at each other intensely. Later, he goes to his parents' house, where he brings something for them to eat. While they dine, his father asks him if he does not feel lonely being on his own, recommending that he should marry some good cook, just as his brother Dylan did. Although Dolan replies that he simply prefers to enjoy his solitude. His brother asks if the next day he is going to the swamp, and his mother becomes a little worried, and asks him to be careful, since that place is very far from the village, and its paths are very dangerous. Although his father comments that he is already an adult, and that the only thing he expects from him is that he returns safe and sound, so as not to worry his mother. The following day, several of his friends go to bid him farewell, and the village nun, Letitia, grants him a blessing from the goddess before he departs. However, the Elder from before mentions that Fortune shows her signs of something bad, and that is why she asks him to be very careful, and little Air gives him a lunch for his journey, and thus Dolan begins his adventure. He mentions that before the lizards used to approach Verum, but one day out of nowhere they disappeared, and that is why he volunteered to investigate the swamp. Upon arriving there, he removes his gloves, and when he touches the water he perceives the spiritual power of the land, which is far too strong, but the power of the water is weakening greatly. This explains why the lizards left that place. At that moment he hears a noise coming from the bushes. He stays on guard, because he knows that only a powerful monster could live under these conditions. Then a Lamia appears before him. Lamia are monsters that are half serpent and half woman, and this one here is extremely beautiful. And Dolan thinks that it is very strange to see a Lamia living in that place. She wonders what she should do, and begins to perform her forbidden steps, confusing Dolan a little. The Lamia warns that she is not there to fight, but out of nowhere a huge monster appears behind her. This serpent-like creature gets frightened, although Dolan cuts its arm with a single strike. However, that monster regenerates it very easily, and the Lamia asks what the hell that thing is. Dolan tells her to be quiet and asks her to hide her tail, and after that the monster goes away. Dolan explains to her that that thing is an earth elemental, which is weakened. Before, many lizards lived in that place, but one day they disappeared, and it is probably because of that elemental. He comments that not long ago a great earthquake occurred, which probably affected that elemental, and unfortunately it will not return to how it was before. After that he introduces himself to her, although he thinks he should have started with that. The Lamia also introduces herself to him as Selena. Dolan asks if she knows how to use magic, and she answers that yes. Then Dolan, who is not foolish or anything, already asks to form a team with her, since they need to face those things. The detail is that Lamias are earth monsters, therefore obviously her magic will not work against that elemental. However, she can use a unique spell of her species, and perhaps that way it might work. Dolan even thinks that it is a good idea, and asks her to support him. And meanwhile he faces that thing. She is still a little nervous, and ends up accepting the proposal. But for some strange reason, this bizarre Lamia says that she will accompany him in health, in sickness, until death separates them. And I think she understood everything wrong. And Dolan also notices this, and asks if that is not what people say when they get married. She realizes what she said and apologizes to him. And after that they split up to attack it. Selena wonders if she will be able to cooperate with him since she has just met him. But then Dolan gives her a signal, and both leap into the attack. He dodges the monster's sand balls, while Selena uses magic to summon a huge serpent. She tries to bind the elemental, but her magic does not bind anything. But that was enough time for Dolan to get close, and by imbuing his sword with draconic magic, he cuts the monster in two, with a single strike. Although, in the middle of this, Selena ends up covered in mud. Dolan is glad to see that she is fine, and thanks her for supporting him. He introduces himself once again, and says that he came from the village of Verum. Selena also introduces herself, and then Dolan warns her that she should dry herself so as not to catch a cold. Although, shortly after that, they observe the gems that the elemental dropped. Already at night, he prepares a small potato stew. Meanwhile, Selena is happy to see that Dolan is not afraid of her. He comments that she looks very different from the Lamias that he knows. She curiously asks what kind of Lamias he knows, and Dolan mentions that they are the type that are more cautious with humans and are much more aggressive. He also tells her that that place has no Lamia village at all. So, why the hell is she there? Selena tells him that when Lamias turn 17 years old, they must go out to look for a husband. And, well, this pretty blonde here is basically looking for someone to take responsibility for her. And our protagonist fit perfectly. Lamias are only women and give birth very rarely. Because of that, there are very few children, and these children end up taking the race of the husband. Basically, Lamias were born when a human woman was cursed, and this curse continued to be passed on, and they have serpent parts and their fluids contain poison. That is why they must choose a husband with a strong body so that he can withstand their poison, and I think it is worth the risk. I would try. Anyway, Dolan understands that for them, it is much more difficult than for other races to find a partner, and Selena tells him that her father is also human, whom he met her mother during a journey, and the two get along very well. That sounded like a hint and Dolan is happy for her. Although Selena asks him why he treats her like a child, Dolan answers that he does not do that. He just thinks that the Lamia is quite adorable. And Selena blushes, but she gets angry because she feels that he is treating her like a child. Dolan hands her a little soup and, upon tasting it, she is amazed because it is the first time she eats something like that. Dolan mentions that his mother taught him how to make it, and tells that on cold nights they used to gather around the pot to eat soup. Selena realizes that he values his family very much, and Dolan realizes that that lonely dragon has already disappeared. Although he loses himself in his thoughts and Selena asks him if he is alright, Dolan answers that he was just thinking that what she said is true. And so the night passes, eating little soup. And on the following day he says goodbye to her and wishes her good luck in her search to find a husband. Little did he know that she had already found one. He then squeezes her hand and thinks that as far as he knows, Lamias like vital energy, and for that reason he uses a little of that energy. Although when he does this with her, she falls to the ground completely flushed. Dolan apologizes to her and thinks that perhaps his dragon vital energy is far too strong. At sunrise he decides to return to the village and asks her to visit him when she finishes her journey in search of a husband. Selena says that she will do that with pleasure, and thus both of them look at each other cheerfully and follow their separate paths. Sometime later we see how a pair of travelers spot Selena from afar. They recommend that she be very careful, since a very beautiful girl like her should not be traveling alone. However, upon looking more closely and noticing that she is a lamia, they flee for their lives. On the other hand, Dolan is once again in the village studying alchemy. Although he is terrible at tasks that involve precision, there is a little girl who likes him quite a lot and tries to cheer him up after his failure. Blushing, she mentions that he is also quite handsome. The elder observes that this girl is very forward, and upon seeing that her medicine has no issues, informs her that she may go play. The little girl leaves to help her mother. Meanwhile, Dolan thinks that in his previous life as a dragon he did not need precision, and because of that, now it is difficult for him to have precision. The elder warns that his failures are merely processes he must go through to reach success, and she will teach him to turn these poisonous failures into perfect antidotes. And damn, what an absurd phrase that elder said. I am going to write it down and take it for life. Later, Dolan goes to have lunch with Aries' family, who invited him to eat. While the rest are praying and thanking God for the food, Dolan thinks that it has been a long time since he last saw his friend Morali, whom I think must be a goddess of nature. And later Dolan runs off to go practice because it got quite late. But on the way he ends up encountering Miyu, a hybrid between a human and a cow. She used to share her milk with the people of the village, and Miyu offers some of her milk to Dolan, and he cannot resist the temptation and ends up drinking it. And it is impossible to resist this here. No one could. After that he meets with Albert and apologizes for arriving late. He orders the boys to go rest. However, they run to Dolan to show their spears, and at the exact moment they do this, Dolan senses the presence of a monster, but he decides to remain silent. Later at night he returns to the place where he sensed it, and thinks that that creature seemed very familiar to him, and that it is something that should not be there. However, upon entering the forest he ends up encountering Selena. She is almost without clothes and gets startled and spills hot water, but Dolan quickly moves to help her, ending up in a situation that is at the very least embarrassing, and at the same time beneficial. He asks what she is doing there, and she asks him to stop looking at her. Dolan confesses that she is a true treasure, and Selena asks him to close his eyes. Dolan, confused, asks why, since she is very beautiful and being seen like that will not make her any less beautiful. The embarrassed Selena asks him to stop, because she feels ashamed, and that he should be ashamed for seeing her like that with nothing on. However, Dolan says that admiring what is beautiful is a natural instinct, and there is nothing wrong with that. But Selena can no longer take it and slaps him across the face for being too shameless. Dolan apologizes for being impolite and asks if she had not gone south in search of a husband. Selena replies that this had been the plan from the beginning, but then everyone she approached ended up running away from her. This is something quite natural. Dolan comments that he wanted to see her again, and therefore he is happy that she is there, and thinks about helping her in everything he can. Then he thinks that it would be a great idea for them to live together, and asks what she thinks about it. And she becomes very nervous, and Dolan reveals that he has a plan that will help. However, she doubts the idea since for being a monster she will end up frightening people. Dolan mentions that there are already other demi-humans in his community, and at first they will be very cautious with her. However, he is certain that with her kindness and Lamia powers, they will end up accepting her quickly. Besides that, with her presence in the village, he will have a much more pleasant life. Although he later thinks that this sounded as if he were hitting on her, Selena ends up loving the idea, but confesses that she is also looking for him for another reason. She wakes up and asks if he could share a little of his vital energy with her again, since she had never tasted a vital energy as delicious as that one. And guys, you can already see the storyline being formed here, right? Dolan replies that when they live together, she will be able to take all the vital energy she wants, and by taking her hand, he shares a little of his energy. Dolan then explains his plan, and then 3 days later fish and monsters appear in the village. Or rather, it has already been 3 days since the same thing has been happening, and the boys suspect that it may be a beast half human, half animal, and according to the tracks on the ground, it could be a serpent. Therefore, it must definitely be a lamia. They wonder why she would leave her prey in that place. And then they go to inform the village chief. Everyone wonders why a monster would want to leave offerings every day. However, the bald man of the group, named Balan, proposes that they create a group to exterminate her before it is too late. But one of the villagers tells him to remain calm, because lamias are very dangerous, and the village only has him and a few soldiers to defend it. He proposes that it is better to ask for reinforcements from the capital, so they decide to send a messenger. Dolan learns about everything, but he hopes that they calm down once they get to know Selena. But first he warns Balan that he should not rush, because the lamia is leaving them offering, and there must certainly be a reason for that. and it is only a matter of waiting, and soon they will discover her true intentions. At that moment, Aureus interrupts and informs the elder that he has the results of her prediction. Upon seeing them, she notices that they are the same ones she obtained, and she informs everyone else that the appearance of the serpent is a symbol of good fortune. So she recommends that they wait to see what will come of it. Dolan is happy to hear this news, and at dusk, he runs off to inform Selena. He says that now is the moment to enter the final phase of the plan, and explains what they must do from that moment on. Sometime later, we see the group of soldiers far from the village, and Balin warns them that they must defend it from any evil. Robert comments to Dolan that all the important people of the village are there, so there are many defense soldiers in the village. However, Dolan knows that he needs them so that the final part of his plan will be a success. The garrison is composed of Captain Balin and his sub-Captain Malida, and also Letitia. And if they are not careful, she could say that Selena has further intention for being an emissary of the goddess. Everything depends on Selena. Although she is dying of fear, she remembers that Dolan commented the previous night that she should rescue him, since they trained in the territory of the poisonous rabbits, so he would take advantage of that situation to enter their burrow, and once they gave her the signal, she would enter to rescue him. And thus, when they warned them, no one would think that she is an evil monster. I think it is a good plan. But just before it begins, a soldier runs for his life and warns that the monster is already there, and Selena wonders if it is the other Lamia. However, suddenly, a huge armored bear appears. Some of the soldiers panic upon seeing it, while a nervous Balin warns them not to attack it. He orders them to keep their distance. But at that moment his son falls, and the bear moves toward him. Dolan tries to help him, but Selena intervenes. She receives the bear's attack in Dolan's place, and everyone present is surprised to see that the Lamia saved them. She, injured, uses her power so that the bear returns to the forest, and everyone watches in astonishment, while Selena asks the boy if he is alright. However, at that moment, the idiot Balin orders Selena to move away from Dolan and his son. But Dolan stays there and asks Toro to go with his father, and Balin orders Dolan to return, but he replies that she saved his life and hopes that he will not harm her. Melina comments to Balin that the Lamia truly saved both of them. However, he refuses to trust such a dangerous monster. Dolan says that he does not intend to leave that place, and Balin becomes irritated and asks Selena if it was she who had been leaving offerings in the village. She answers that yes. However, at that moment, she bites her tongue, and the boys become confused. They ask why she saved Toro and Dolan, and she introduces herself to them and asks them to let her live in the village, revealing that she left her home and set out on a journey, following the rules of her race. However, traveling alone is much lonelier than she had imagined. She tells them that she does not intend to stay forever, and only hopes that she can live with them for a while. She mentions that the reason she saved them is because certainly their families would be sad if they died, and says that her father was also human, and that she has no intention of harming humans. Everyone there watches in surprise and comments that instead of being frightening, she is quite beautiful. She comments that Magru's prediction was correct and has come true. And at that very moment, Letitia is illuminated by the goddess Merle, and after finishing listening to her, she informs everyone who is there that the goddess said that the Lamia, who stands before them, harbors no malice. She is a child of nature, just like them, and Dolan is surprised to see that Merle manifested herself through Letitia. As she approaches him and asks him to open his eyes, Selena ends up fainting due to blood loss. The boys quickly mobilize to take her to the village, and after some time, when she recovers, they show her the house where she will stay. Upon entering, Selena is delighted and thanks them for giving her such a welcoming place. Balin apologizes for having aimed his sword at her and thanks her for saving his son. Eri comments that they know nothing about Lamias, so now she will have to tell more about herself so that they can get to know her better. Selena, embarrassed, replies that she also does not know much about humans and hopes that they can teach her. Dolan pretends that he does not know her and introduces himself to her, while Selena, happy, does the same. Thus, they welcome her to the village of Veron, and the boys receive her very warmly. Meanwhile, Dolan feels very grateful to his dear friend Merle, since she did him this small favor. At night, while sleeping, Dolan assumes his astral form to travel to the palace of the goddess and thank her personally. Upon sensing his presence, the goddess rejoices, and Dolan gives thanks because, without her help, he does not know what would have happened. He also confesses that he is quite surprised that she knows about his rebirth as a human. Merle replies that she felt his soul among the prayers she received, and it shone with great joy of life. This surprised her because she understood that he was tired of living. Dolan even confesses that when the hero drove the sword into his heart, he did not feel the despair of death. At that moment, he simply accepted that it was his end, but his rebirth as a human changed everything. He learned how people live, with all their strength, even though their lives are vulgar compared to those of the Celestials. They shine intensely. Merle can feel Dolan's heart and soul, which are full of joy. Soon after that, they say their farewells, and Dolan is abruptly awakened by the wild Selena. She apologizes for entering without knocking on the door, and Dolan reassures her and comments that he dreamed of an old friend who said very beautiful things. Selena is very happy, but remembers that they had promised Christina that they would plant potatoes that day, and if she knew that he forgot, she might be very sad, and she can be heard outside. On the other hand, we discover that in the kingdom girls are disappearing, and a girl ends up delivering the mail to an elven headmistress, saying that that day's correspondence is very special and must be read as soon as possible, since it was sent by Christina herself. The headmistress notices that she is quite excited about Christina. The girl replies that this is obvious, since she is doing very well in summer. It is located north of Galoa, which has an extreme climate. The villagers spend most of their time training, and in one of these training sessions, Christina defeats Malada, and after that the boys invite her to have lunch. The villagers are very affectionate and attentive, and a bald man invites her to drink with them. But Albert recommends that she does not accept, because when the captain starts drinking, he does not let anyone leave until dawn. Malada asks Balin to leave Christina out of his nonsense, and he apologizes in case that offended her. He then decides to drag the other two to drink with him, while Christina becomes a little sad and silent. Upon entering her room, she sees the three of them going to drink while smiling. Later she goes to train and sees Dolan and Selena, who greet her, but notice that she does not seem to be very well. Then Selena invites her to her house, and upon taking her there, shows her her things. She also invites her to lie down on her bed, saying that it is very comfortable. However, Dolan comments that it is only comfortable for her, and that does not mean that it might be very comfortable for humans. But then Christina lies down and says that it is very cozy, and Selena comments that it was Balin's idea, and confesses that because she is a Lamia, at first she was very worried that people would not accept her, but the more she gets to know the village, the more she loves the people who are there. She mentions that Balan really likes his wife's milk, and that among all the villagers, everyone competes to see who drinks the most. And man, what a good village this is. I would like to go there. Dolan comments that everyone has their virtues, such as Malada, who despite being hot-headed, loves sweets, although that is not exactly a virtue. Selena asks what he is doing standing there, and Christina says that he should lie down with them on the bed, and they end up pulling him to join them. The following days everyone ends up drinking Miu's milk, but when Balin proposes to see who can drink more of his wife's milk, this begins to get out of control. Christina then arrives and says that she wants to taste that milk he is so proud of. Miu happily goes to fetch it for her, and when she hands it over, Christina drinks it all in one single gulp. This anime here is already turning into a mess. Balin realizes that she is a worthy opponent, and the two compete to see who drinks more milk, and so they stay there the entire afternoon. They are completely ruining this anime. Man. Anyway, Albert is quite surprised to see that Balin is losing, since he found someone capable of drinking more of his wife's milk than he can. Everyone congratulates her for her victory, and a little later Dolan asks if she is alright, because it seems like she is pushing herself too hard, but she replies that she is perfectly fine. Then they are interrupted by that cursed dairy cow, who asks Christina to taste her daughter's milk as well. She does so and comments that it is delicious, and at that moment the little one becomes happy and jumps to hug her, thus concluding her letter, saying that thanks to Dolan and Selena, she now gets along much better with the villagers. And then suddenly someone enters the room, and in a scene change we see several nobles commenting that Christina is the best student of the Magic Academy, and that she befriended the Lamia. And many wonder if that is possible, since it is quite strange for a human to become friends with a monster. Others say that the supposed Lamia seems to be young and beautiful. And then the girl named Karen, who is a mage and a government general, asks the headmistress to tell her more about this Lamia, because even being only one, they cannot ignore such a threat. Humans cannot live together with monsters, and even less with creatures like Lamias. However, they will still need to deal with the case of the disappearances. The headmistress comments that those are indeed worrying incidents, unlike the Lamia, who seems to be very kind and friendly. Even the Oracle of the Gods asked people to live with her. Even so, the stubborn woman replies that they must prepare for the worst. The girl is already trying to ruin the whole thing, and then she says that it is better for Christina to return to Gallo. She asks under which jurisdiction Verum is located, and then the elder intervenes saying that it is under his care, and that he will depart immediately for there. On the other hand, the group finishes planting the potatoes, and Dolan recommends to Selena that she plant the potatoes deeper. However, at that moment, Cled asks them to kindly go to the village gate. When they arrive there, the village chief holds Christina, while the boys are quickly surrounded by Golda. This is the commissioner of the northern border, who asks Dolan if it was he who took the Lamia to the sacred land of the king. Dolan answers that yes, but the oracle intervenes, speaking to Golda, and that the goddess Merli has already declared that the Lamia was not evil. But even so, the man does not want to hear it, and says that he must fulfill his duty to protect those lands. Dolan feared that they would send a squad to eliminate her, but realizes that they want her for something else. Then Golda announces that they will take the Lamia to the general, so that she may verify whether she is safe or not. Dolan asks why they are taking the Lamia. If supposedly he does not doubt the judgment of the goddess Merli, he replies that it does not matter what the goddess says. If the Lamia wants to live in Verum, she will have to follow the procedures that the law of the kingdom determines. Selena understands that she needs to accept, but Dolan warns Golda that it was he who brought her, and asks to accompany her as well. The commissioner gives permission for him to accompany her, and later they end up departing from the village. Christina thinks that she must speak with the headmistress about this, since she has considerable influence in the government, and then uses her magic to quickly run there. On the other hand, Dolan asks Selena if she is alright. She replies that yes, and he offers a bit of his blanket. Dolan tries to cheer her up, but Selena is more worried about having been the cause of getting others into trouble. However, Dolan pulls her to his chest, and tries to calm her the way his mother used to calm him. He says that everything is fine, and that if she feels bad for being a Lamia, then he will scold her all night long. In another scene we see Christina, who arrives at the kingdom in a hurry, and asks the headmistress to tell her about the unexpected visit of the commissioner to Verum. The headmistress asks her to sit down, and after giving her a cup of tea, informs her that they will not kill Selena, since she has the blessing of the goddess Merli, but that taking her was not the commissioner's idea, but rather an order from Karen. She says that Karen considers the Lamia a threat, and perhaps she is involved in a wave of disappearances. But if Karen says that, the others could begin to suspect her, and Christina becomes very frightened. Meanwhile, we see Karen reading a letter mysteriously, and then we see the commissioner delivering them to Karen. This one welcomes them to Galoa. Although she asks Dolan who he is and why he is with the Lamia, he answers that he is her escort, and after that Karen invites them to dinner, while ordering Gouda to send the report. And already at the table she serves a banquet. Selena, surprised, confesses that she thought they wanted to kill her. Karen replies that this would certainly have happened, since they were very worried, thinking that she might manipulate the villagers. Although these were only suspicions, since she would never eliminate someone as pure and beautiful as her. This psychopath here is just pretending, right? On the other hand, we see Commissioner Gouda meeting with the headmistress, where Christina asks what he is doing, and where Dolan and Selena are, but he only comments that he needs to speak with the headmistress. Returning to that crazy psychopath, she mentions that she hopes they enjoyed the food, although Dolan is feeling his body extremely heavy, and then Karen comments that she is eager to devour a Lamia as beautiful as her. It is then that they collapse, and we discover that there is a certain magical being in the city of Galoa, who has lived for more than 300 years. Christina asks her headmistress if it is her, but she replies that it is not, and Gouda reveals that it is a human being, but no human can live that long, so they deduce that this being used forbidden magic to possess the body of a woman, and thus continue living. And now this being has become interested in Selena, and then we see them tied up in a room, and Karen is very eager to skin poor Selena to take her beautiful skin. However, Dolan breaks free and warns her not to even think about touching Selena, since she will be his future wife. He notices how the magic circles on the floor reek of blood, deducing that this is not the first time she has done this kind of thing. He asks how many people she has already eliminated, but Karen replies that the restraints he broke were made of Gollum Largato skin, and that it is impossible for an ordinary human being to break them so easily. Dolan, already furious with life, asks once again how many people she has eliminated, and she replies cynically that she stopped counting when she reached 100. and says that she uses her victims for research, since everyone possesses something precious, and she collects all these things, and that is why she continues to be very beautiful. Dolan comments that this magic was forbidden, and that she certainly must have made a pact with some demon. She replies that yes, saying that an Arakan gave her the arms, and a beast woman gave her the legs, and that the skin she is wearing at the moment is the skin of an elf, but that it is already time to put on a new skin, and she tells Dolan that he should be happy, because she chose his dear Lamia, since she will use everything from her without wasting anything. However, Selena wakes up, irritated, and asks how she can commit all these cruelties. Karen mentions that she will definitely have to improve the substances of dubious origin that she is using, in order to make them sleep properly. But Selena becomes furious upon discovering that this witch deceived all those beasts to take their organs. Karen does not care at all, because they were destined for a life of suffering, and it is better that she use their parts than for them to be wasted in brothels. At that, Selena falters and comments that Commissioner Gouda was right about her. Karen asks what she just said, and Dolan replies that the problem with her disgraces is that they tend to talk too much. He shows a magical object that transmits sound, and thus Gouda is able to hear everything she just said. At that moment, Headmistress Christina and Gouda, together with their soldiers, invade the room, where Christina, furious, cannot believe that the youngsters offered themselves like whiskey. It is then that Gouda orders the capture of Karen. The headmistress reveals that Karen intended to use Selena to blame them for the disappearances, and thus be able to eliminate her to take her body, with the excuse that she tried to resist and had to be killed. However, she replies that they should not dare speak to her with such contempt. They were born with a beautiful face, and therefore they could never understand her. When she was little, she was fascinated by everything that was beautiful, but soon she realized that she did not possess that characteristic, and it was then that she understood that she could steal it from those people who had it, and so she became a crazed, psychopathic killer, stealing a part from all of her victims, feeling ecstatic when seeing her new appearance. But now she blames the headmistress, since her plans were ruined, and she screams that they should not dare despise her efforts to be beautiful. Karen then decides to show them the result of her 300 years of research, and transforms into a horrifying monster. Dolan notes that she carried out a bodily fusion with magic. Therefore Karen definitely made a pact with some demon. He wonders how many victims she must have sacrificed to reach this state, since she has a large quantity of parts from different species, and now she plans to turn them into parts of her own body. Selena uses her magic to restrain her, but she cannot hold out for long. Christina manages to defend her by cutting the monster's hand, and warns that she will punish her for hurting her friends. She then charges at Karen, cutting each of her parts, but this only provokes her rage. Dolan notices that she is now using a very powerful dark magic, and the headmistress thinks that if it continues like this, they will end up being buried alive down there. However, at that moment, Dolan warns the girls that from that point on, he will handle the situation. The headmistress observes that Dolan prepared some magic circles, while he asks Karen if she is already satisfied. Meanwhile, he looks at her with pity. She, irritated, orders him to stop looking at her that way, because she has far more mana than any human being. But then Dolan replies to her that her hands are stained with blood, and will never be beautiful. He says that the people she consumed also had their own dreams, and that an abomination like her had no right to appear to consume them. Dolan summons the celestial spears and, at the same time, traps her in a barrier, where she ends up being disintegrated by his powerful attack. A few days later, we see that Selena is making an effort to study, although she feels like her head is going to explode. Dolan explains that she must learn to express her feelings in the language of that place, and is very eager to see her when she learns how to write. At that moment, Christina enters the room and asks how they are doing. Dolan replies that Selena can already read very well. Christina congratulates him for being an exemplary teacher, although Selena comments that she is quite surprised, since Christina is a student, and spends the entire day doing that. Then they hear a carriage and notice that it is Director Olivia and Commissioner Gouda. They go to have a cup of coffee and apologize for having involved them in all that matter. Selena, surprised, asks him to raise his head, since, in any case, everyone is safe and sound. Dolan confesses that he was very surprised to see that they were going to serve as bait, but that they managed to get out of that thanks to the antidote that his master taught him. This completely nullified the poison of that psychopath. Gouda comments that the government feels very ashamed that one of its mages committed such crimes. He also remembers that he brought the permission for Selena to be able to live in peace, as well as her registration. Therefore, now she will be able to live in Veron without any problem. Selena becomes very excited, Although Olivia then tells Dolan that someone wants to see him, she takes him to Denzel, where Dolan introduces him to Selena, and comments that he is the eldest son of Lady Meguro. They mention that the headmistress told them all about his feats, and, taking advantage of the fact that everyone is there, invite them for a walk through the city. However, while doing so, a child drops a kind of nut. Selena tries to return it, but only causes fear among the people. A little sad, she asks Dolan to buy some souvenirs for the villagers of Veron, and he replies that this is a very good idea. Denzel picks up the nut and tells Selena that he will return it for her. Later, Gold thanks everyone for everything they did for them, and before leaving, Denzel asks Dolan if he would like to attend the academy, since he recently spoke with the headmistress, and noticed that he has extraordinary power, and that it would be a shame to waste it. Dolan thanks him for the invitation, but already has many things to do in the village. However, Denzel understands, although he still asks him to take some time to think about it. Soon after, Olivia approaches Dolan and whispers to him about his soul, mentioning that if he wished to use those powers to help people, he should expand his knowledge at the academy. Denzel warns that if he wants to protect the village, one of the ways to do so would be by leaving, and Selena, upon hearing this, obviously becomes sad. After some time, the youngsters begin their journey back home, where Christina asks if he is thinking about what the headmistress told him. Dolan replies that he cannot deny that he is curious about joining, but feels that he still has much to do in the village. The headmistress knows that Dolan loves the village very much and confesses that it is a great village. Although Dolan mentions to her that after having been in Galoa, he understands that Veron is a very small and poor village and asks her opinion on what to change. Christina asks him to call Chris and replies that in Veron, it is possible to learn a limited number of things. While at the academy, he will experience many things that he will not be able to experience there. Dolan thinks that perhaps Denzel is right, although Selena feels sad knowing that Dolan will leave. On the other hand, we see how a huge swarm of ant monsters is advancing through the forest. An elf panics upon seeing them, since they are coming out of a very strange portal. We see that the ant sends the elf straight to his death, and then his companion tries to save him, but he ends up serving as a snack for them as well. Sometime later, a horrible scene occurs. A large group of elves scattered everywhere, and then what seems to be their leader and his companion find one who is half dead. Before breathing his last, he reveals that it was caused by a horde of monsters. Then we see the little bull who is training with Christina, while Dolan trains another youngster. All of this while Selena watches Dolan, enchanted, as she remembers the proposal that was made to her. She becomes sad when she thinks that one day her dear Dolan will leave the village, and meanwhile some children also play with her. And Dolan feels happy to see that Selena is becoming more and more integrated into the village. Then Christina asks Dolan to accompany her to explore the forest, since the animals that die there are very dangerous, and she wants to test herself against them. Although Dolan replies that it is not worth entering the forest without a real reason. She explains that Albert was unable to herd the pigs because of the monsters. She plans to escort them so that they remain safe. And with no other options, Dolan ends up accepting. Although instead of going one by one, an entire battalion goes along to accompany the pigs. They really have nothing better to do in that village. Selena and Christina rejoice at feeling the fresh forest air, but after some time they decide to separate. A chubby man goes after one of the pigs, and unfortunately the pig passes away. But it is literally for the better, because now it will turn into a succulent rib. The soldier is not so lucky, because he ends up encountering a huge thorn tiger. Luckily Balin intervenes before he becomes lunch, but it does not take long for another huge ant to appear. Everyone becomes alert upon hearing Balin scream and runs quickly toward him, where Dolan uses an air sphere to get rid of the ant. Christina asks what kind of monster that is, and Dolan informs her that it is not a monster, but a demon. It is a resident of the demonic realm, and these ants are known as Surtes, low-ranking demons that serve as scouts. Christina asks how he knows so much, and Dolan apologizes as he replies that he read one of Meguro's books. Dolan attacks to distract it, while Christina takes the opportunity to finish it off. Although after eliminating it, he asks Christina not to tell the villagers about the demon so as not to alarm them. At night, they are gathered together, where the village chief informs them that Balin is no longer in danger. Christina asks if this type of monster is common in that place, and the village chief replies that he has never heard of anything like it. Balin is the leader of the village garrison, and the strongest soldier of all, and if that monster was capable of causing him so much damage, then it is something very serious. Dolan knows that a thorn tiger is already too much for the village. However, the real problem is the demon. At that moment, Meguro enters the room and informs them that Balan has already awakened. But the cut on his body was not caused by the tiger, but by something much more powerful. Dolan, to avoid revealing more information, asks if something is happening in the forest, and if that is the case, he thinks about going there to deal with it. Meguro says that there really is something in the forest, and that they must learn to live with it, since life on the frontier is like that. However, Dolan insists on investigating what is happening in the forest. And Meguro, in order not to prolong the discussion any further, gives him permission, but warns him that he must take someone as an escort. Christina does not hesitate to offer herself before Selena, but the village chief does not allow it, because if something happened, they would have no way to explain it to the academy. Not long ago, they promised Commissioner Gouda that they would keep her safe. Selena takes advantage of the situation and offers to go with her beloved Dolan, since despite everything, she has a cursed gaze and can also use magic. Dolan even tries to refuse, but seeing that she is determined to accompany him, he ends up accepting to take her. The village chief makes them promise that they will return unharmed, and the next day, the youngsters set out on their adventure. Selena tries to concentrate to show Dolan that she can be useful in combat. Although upon arriving in the forest, they end up encountering Christina. Despite everything, the girl ended up going there, and once inside, the youngsters face a group of mutant spiders. Dolan recalls how Christina let him know that, although the village chief forbade her from going with them, she holds great affection for the village and hopes they can understand that she wants to help the people she cares about, making Dolan feel that now, even he has become much more human. However, in the middle of all this confusion, a huge monster appears. Selena easily controls the situation with an apple and informs the youngsters that the monster is apologizing for having frightened them. Christina is surprised to see that Dolan has a bunch of cubs on top of him. Sometime later, the youngsters eat together with the monsters, where Christina asks whether they are not afraid of monsters. Selena replies that she herself is one and hopes that other people could also be like her, remembering the incident that happened in the capital. At that moment, a little monkey approaches Christina, and Selena tells her that she should not be afraid. She gives her an apple to offer to the small monkey, mentioning that they were just hungry and had to attack them because they could not find food. Dolan explains that they were driven out of their territory, and that probably also happened to the spiders, who, by the way, were not so lucky. Then Dolan offers a piece of toast with special papaya jam, leaving Christina quite enchanted, and Selena mentions that she looks charming while eating. Dolan says that she has a certain fascinating charm, while the white-haired girl blushes and asks them to stop teasing her. Even so, Selena asks her to reveal the secret of her charm, since maybe that way she could improve her charm spell and possibly find a husband. Although Christina does not know how to respond to that, Dolan lets her know that she does not need any of that, because she is already fine just the way she is. Selena becomes startled and wonders whether Dolan is implying that she is charming and that she does not need to look for a husband, because maybe he wants to become her husband. That girl quickly created an entire fantasy just because of a compliment, far too emotional. However, the youngsters sense a presence and, out of nowhere, a fairy appears trapped inside a magical sphere. Dolan wonders what she is murmuring, but then some monsters appear. Dolan asks Selena to keep them away, while he and Christina deal with the first one, but they quickly begin to be surrounded by an entire group. Although it is nothing they cannot handle, Dolan takes one down, but another attacks by surprise. Although he transforms his arm into that of a dragon to crush it with great ease, Christina takes care of another one, but almost gets herself killed. However, Selena ends up saving her, and later they ask the fairy if she is alright. She thanks them for having saved her, and the youngsters introduce themselves to her. She tells them that her name is Merly, and explains that that demonic soldier appeared out of nowhere and began to chase her. Dolan thinks that they are nothing more than scouts, and therefore it is very likely that much more powerful demons will come after them. Christina asks Merly to tell them what is happening, and the little one mentions that they have many problems. At that moment, the youngsters feel that they are being surrounded and Christina prepares to attack, but Dolan stops her, because he senses that they are being observed with caution and suspicion, rather than hostility, and therefore he decides to lower his sword. Christina does the same, and then several elves begin to reveal themselves before them. Their leader asks Merly to step away from them, and the little one approaches and calls him Dio. She informs him that they saved her, and he already knows it. After all, he was spying on everything, not even bothering to help that scoundrel. Meanwhile, Dolan warns the girls that although he does not believe they will do any harm, it is better for them to stay behind as a precaution. Dio approaches them and thanks them for having helped his friend Merle. However, he warns that the forest ahead belongs to its inhabitants and asks them why they entered it. Dolan replies that lately he has seen many unusual monsters near his village. They believe that something very strange is happening inside the forest, and that is why they came to investigate. However, he apologizes for not having asked permission to enter. Dio understands, however, and asks them to leave as soon as possible, because currently the forest is very dangerous. Dolan asks if he is referring to the demonic soldiers, and upon seeing Dio's expression, he realizes that they also appeared in his forest, and that he is very irritated because of it, and he replies that they are currently at war against them. Christina, somewhat agitated, asks how they are facing them, and whether they have already informed the kingdom. Although she exaggerates, Selena tries to calm her down, but Christina, a little irritated, says that dealing with just one of those things is already quite difficult, and on top of that they have an entire army, and therefore they will do whatever is necessary to help them. The rest of the elves lower their weapons, and afterward Christina apologizes for having lost her temper. One of the elf women comments to Merle that it seems these humans are quite good, and she tells her that they are. Besides that, they also defeated the demonic soldier. The others mention that Christina is quite skilled with the sword and would be of great help, while Dolan thinks that Christina's attitude is helping a lot. However, he thinks about the entire demonic army and assumes that the demon realm portal is connected to the forest, and if that portal fully opens, much more powerful demons will be able to enter this world, but he cannot allow that to happen, even if it means that people discover his dragon soul and he starts being hunted. Dolan approaches Jill and proposes that she allow him to help them, since this is an emergency. Although his laws forbid it, it is best that they allow him to help them. The other small elf, named Phil, holds Jill's hand. She says that, although she understands her responsibility as a leader, her villagers are more important than the laws, and she can see that these humans are sincere, and that she can trust them. Jill ends up accepting and asks the youths to please lend her their strength. Although they let her know that they will start trusting them after seeing them fight, the youths agree. But when they are about to join hands, a huge tremor occurs, and when they turn around, they observe a great demonic energy. Dolan feels that the portal has definitely opened, and from it several demons of different classes have begun to emerge. Quickly, Dolan begins to conjure, covering them with wind support magic to help them move much faster, and then they start to move. On the other hand, we see that the demons are in this place to obtain the Yggdrasil and deliver it to the Demon King. They will basically serve as the vanguard, and by delivering the Yggdrasil to their king, the expectation is that he will trust them even more. However, they wonder where George is, and the small demon mentions that he has not arrived yet, since his mana is absurd, so he probably got delayed a little. One of the demons mentions that while they wait, it is better to have some fun, since they can sense some elves in the area. They propose a race to see who finds them first, and those who find them will be given permission to finish them off in whatever way they want. Without wasting time, they start to move, and on the other side, we see that the serps have started to move toward the elves' village. They defend themselves as best they can, but they become frightened, because before them appears a Gaudel. This is the first of the 4 demonic knights. He advances against the village, killing several elves. Meanwhile, the youths are informed by the spirits that there are monsters attacking the north of the village. They are certainly demons of which Dolan spoke. But as they advance, a large horde of serps appears before them. Back in the village, Gaudel advances against one of the elves fallen on the ground, but before sending him to his death, he is stopped by one of her vines. The elf runs for his life, and on the battlefield appears Diodora, who is absorbing the demon's mana with her black roses. In turn, the youths are getting closer and closer to the village, and Christina charges against all the giant ants in her path, while Dolan uses his magic and eliminates a large number with his rain of magical arrows. Dio clears a path for them to the village and asks the youths to hurry up to enter, although before that they decide to buy some time, and Dolan hands them some crystals that enhance their power. The group does not hesitate to use them, and Selena uses her earth magic and quickly finishes off the ants. Christina uses her invention magic, clearing the entire area, and Dolan does not want to be left behind and uses his magic to create a huge fireball that disintegrates a large horde of ants. Dio is surprised to see his incredible power and warns that with this demonstration of absurd strength, he will definitely begin to trust them. It is then that we see Diodora, who asks the demon if he happens to know what he is doing. He killed, without a shred of mercy, animals, flowers, and everything that crossed his path. He has already committed far too many sins and does not think about forgiving them. However, the demon only laughs and lets her know that although for them these are sins, for him it is nothing at all. The real sin is being weak, and everyone died for being weak. Diodora, already tired of his words, decides to finish him off. However, her plans disintegrate, and we hear the voice of the other small demon, who scolds the other for having wasted too much time. She appears before Diodora and introduces herself as Huffle. She is one of the 4 demonic knights and is quite strong. In turn, the youths finally manage to enter the village, and Dio warns them that this is not the time for sightseeing because they are late. It is then that the demon scolds Huffle because he does not need her help, although she replies that he does not need to put on a tough guy act, since her duty is only to cause an uproar. And soon after she turns to Diodora, she asks if she is ready for the suffering that awaits her. And Diodora asks if they are really going to use brute force to fight her, because if that is the case, she will have to fight against her friends, and she asks for help from the spirits of the flowers of the forest. However, she becomes worried when she notices that the forest's flora does not respond to her. And meanwhile, Huffle laughs and asks if she was perhaps calling those flower spirits, revealing that while she was coming there, she wiped all of them out. The spirit of the roses was begging Diodora for help in its pitiful agony. Enraged, she attacks with her vine, although Huffle dodges the attack without much difficulty, and comments that she should thank her, since flowers compete for the nutrients of the earth, and now she has no more competition. However, Diodora is extremely irritated and makes it very clear that she does not intend to let her live. She attacks once again, although Huffle easily defends herself, while commenting that she too is a floral spirit, but unlike her flower does not grow in that paradise, because she is the spirit of a flower from the demon realm, which feeds on blood and life. Huffle comments that living beings exist only to nourish her flower, and are merely sacrifices, and Diodora will become one of them. Diodora continues attacking her, but Huffle only laughs at her pathetic attempts to hit her. But suddenly she is surprised to see that the vine releases a thorn. This thorn strikes her, but then disintegrates. Diodora mocks her face, saying that she should be more careful. Although Huffle becomes quite irritated upon seeing her own blood, she makes it clear that she does not intend to forgive her, because a mere rose from the surface cannot stain her beauty. Both glare at each other with hatred and prepare to kill each other. But then the big demon intervenes and tries to finish Diodora once and for all. Huffle tells him not to meddle with her prey, but he replies telling her not to interfere, that this fight is his. Diodora even manages to dodge, but in midair Huffle lands a punch on her, and when she falls, she is terrified to realize that all of her mana has been absorbed. Both demons advance toward her, while she thinks that she cannot die without avenging her friends and family. However, she can do nothing in this situation. Luckily, Dolan ends up appearing on the battlefield, leaving the demons quite surprised to see a human in the elves' forest. He turns to Diodora and asks if she can stand up, but then the big demon becomes enraged, since he saw that Dolan turned his back on him, and asks if he happens to have no brain. At that moment, Christina appears and blocks the demon's attack, and Dolan takes the opportunity to cut his neck without hesitation, but he manages to dodge. The girl tries to take advantage of the distraction, but is hit by an arrow. Dolan warns that they are in an elven village, and while the mist does not dissipate, they can hit any target. The girl gets irritated, but right at that moment they feel a huge rumble, and the demonic energy begins to overflow from the portal. We see that a fourth demon begins to emerge from it, and Rafli gets excited upon realizing that he has arrived. The other demon is desperate to finish them off before he arrived. However, Selena also arrives on the battlefield, and she is quite irritated. She summons a large number of serpents to restrain the demon, and Rafli tries to devour Selena, but Dolan intervenes. He plays Bomberman and throws an explosive bomb at her that sends her flying. After that, Dolan concentrates and invokes Hellfire to transform it into a Lance of Judgment. Unfortunately, he launches his attack in another direction, in order to avoid killing Selena. Then Jelen appears. He presents himself before them, and while commenting that he is disappointed with the other demon, he challenges Selena to a duel. Dolan watches him, but realizes that he is not the same aura he had felt a short time ago. Meanwhile, another demon manages to break free and tells Jelen that she is his prey. When he prepares to send her to her death, Christina intervenes, leaving the demon surprised to see that she managed to block his attack. At the same time, he becomes excited, since it might be worth defeating a superhuman like her. Although Christina does not care about him getting excited about fighting her. However, she releases the power of her sword, and after dodging the demon's first attack, she ends up driving her sword into his neck. However, he becomes enraged, and a battle begins between the two. Meanwhile, Selena is using magic to restrain Jelen and asks Dolan to let her handle him. However, her attack causes no damage, and Selena, desperate, tries to bind him once again with her serpents. But Jelen makes her know that all those serpents of the demon realm are not that impressive. He challenges her to try to strangle him with them, but Selena hesitates to do so, and Jelen comments that, despite having given her the curse of serpents, it is useless. She has doubts about finishing off her enemy, and he lets her know that a girl with so many doubts should not fight between life and death. He feels ashamed of her and tries to kill her, but Dolan intervenes, blocking his attack. Right after that, he channels his energy into his fist, and after hitting him, throws him against a wall. Dolan warns that the fight is over. However, at that moment, the fourth and final demon appears. One of the elves informs Dio that they have already managed to eliminate the rest of the smaller demons, and only the most powerful ones remain, but he is being oppressed by the terrible mana emanating from that last demon. Dolan realizes that it is Golod. This individual is different, and his fighting aura is sharp and very refined. He comments to Dolan that it is impressive that he is not afraid of them, and that on top of that he challenges them, and because of that, he prepares to advance against Dolan. This demon charges at Dolan, and when their swords collide, Dolan tells him his real name. The demon comments that he has heard that name before, but strongly doubts that it has any relation to that person. However, Dolan blocks his attack once again, and the demon notices something very strange. Dolan, to prevent his draconic mana from being discovered, continues attacking non-stop, and launches a fireball at him, but it causes no damage. The demon uses a shield and his 3 swords to block the attack. Diodora wonders who the hell that man is, literally hell, while Christina is surprised to see that he is surpassing that bizarre demon. Meanwhile, Dolan makes him realize what he is truly capable of. He responds that he thought he was like the other 3 demons, but realizes that he is on a completely different level, and asks if perhaps he is an ancient divinity, a fallen god, something like that. The demon is surprised to see that he was able to perceive that, and mentions that it seems he is also hiding his identity. Dolan feels frustrated, because he cannot defeat him the way things are, but if he uses his draconic powers, he will end up destroying the elven village. However, the demon advances once again against Dolan, fighting in ecstasy. He comments that sooner or later he will discover his true identity. Dolan attacks him, but his blows are not enough, while the demon only grows more excited upon seeing his great strength. Since it is very difficult to find someone so strong on the surface, he begins to accumulate mana. While the other 2 demons warn that he should not focus only on George, they prepare to finish off Dolan, and the girls try to help him, but Galen places himself in their path. The other 2 demons then combine their attacks, but Dolan uses his draconic magic and repels the blow using a massive typhoon, then defeats them with an energy sphere. At that, the demon apologizes to him and comments that he already knew that a surprise attack would not defeat him. Then, he begins to accumulate energy in his swords, and under the astonished gaze of everyone, he does so. Golov comments that Dolan is human, and at the same time not, and if he comes out alive from that attack, he will recognize him as a formidable enemy. He advances against Dolan with his attack of the 3 demonic light swords. Selena is frightened, but Dolan calmly watches him, and uses his dragon energy to deflect the attack, making it dissipate in the air. Golov cannot believe it, but then laughs and comments that accepting a stupid deal and going to the surface was worth it, while Dolan simply responds that he does not fight to entertain a fallen god. However, Golov then comments that he is already tired, since Dolan is not fighting with all his strength to avoid collateral damage. For that same reason, he announces to all the inhabitants of the forest whether they will continue fighting to the death, or if they prefer to join them to keep living. He warns them that they have 3 days to make a decision. Therefore, it is better that they use that time to discuss the details of their future. He orders the rest of the demons to withdraw from the area, while at the same time, the demon in front warns Selena that showing compassion toward the enemy is the greatest sin. Raffle warns Diodora that next time she will finish her off and make her enter eternal suffering, while the other warns Christina not to think of keeping that humiliation. And before leaving, Golov warns Dolan that they have only 3 days, and he responds that next time he will fight with all his strength. After that, they withdraw. And after that, Selena jumps into Dolan's arms. She shouts that the smile he gave made her scared, while he responds that he is fine, that he only suffered a minor injury. He asks the girl if they are all right. However, Christina warns that she has many questions to ask him, but she thinks about leaving them to be asked later. Dolan thanks her, because besides that, it seems that Dio and the rest of the elves also wanted to speak with him. Shortly after, they take him to the chief's hall, where they meet a wolf man and a spider woman, in addition to a very old elf, but he is well cared for. He introduces himself to the youths as Dio, and he thanks him for having saved his village. He also introduces Yujin, the Arachnidia, and says that the wolf man is named Blake. Dolan thinks that they must be the leaders of several tribes of the forest, although Dio comments that he knows that Dolan has more power than ordinary humans, and he warns him that he should ask for an opinion from someone who lives in a human city. And suddenly, Director Olivia enters the room. Everyone is surprised to see her, although she explains to them that she is an elf born in that village. Because of that, it is very obvious that upon learning what happened, she went there quickly. However, Dio comments that he has no intention of waiting 3 days, as Golok said. And that is why, on the very next day, when the sun is at its highest point, they will go to the demonic portal equipped with everything they can in order to destroy the demonic portal, since they can remain on the surface thanks to the energy of that portal. And if they destroy that portal, they will no longer be able to remain there, although they will also not be able to return. So all that will remain is to wait until the forest cleans itself on its own. Dolan understands their intentions, since they spoke with Dio and want to continue fighting alongside them. However, Dio warns that they cannot ask for more help from outsiders. They feel as if they are being looked down upon, although in truth they know that they are quite strong. In any case, it would be they who should be asking them for help. Although it may sound poetic, they must ask for all the help they can gather. Arachnidia and Dio know that Blake is right, and they thank the youths for lending their strength. At that, Olivia comments to Dio that he can trust them. In addition, she also asks for help from the kingdom, but they will take a little longer to arrive there. Dolan can feel as if everyone wishes to protect the forest, and he declares that they will do everything possible to live up to that. Then Diodora leaves the room, and it is then that we see the demon, who is furious, finishing off the explorers because he could not defeat Christina. Raffley is also there, finishing off all the surds that are in her path, since she is furious for having been injured by Diodora. At that, Golod comments that so-called Dolan pleased him very much, and he feels that he will be able to have a battle like he has not had in a long time. The other demon is happy for him, since he believed that he would not enjoy more battles outside of heaven and the infernal realm, while he thinks that Dolan's combat skills, human, and his spirit, which he showed in combat, cannot be anything other than a sign of the ancestral dragon. He remembers when he served the army of the god of war, and he was summoned to the field by the goddess Myro. He wiped out all the demons in his path, and upon seeing him, Golod was astonished, since that ancestral dragon massacred all the demons at once. He inspired fear in demons when he spoke his name. He was the Alpha and the Omega, and now he is merely a human. However, despite being a human, it will be a battle in which blood will burn. He is very eager for time to pass quickly so that he can battle against Dolan. Meanwhile, he heads toward Diodora. She is very irritated and asks what the hell he is looking for in her, and Dolan lets her know that he only wanted to take care of something that worried him before the battle of the next day. Dolan moves closer to her and notices that her wounds have not healed, and he asks if he can take a look at them. Diodora responds that he should not worry about that. However, upon seeing her wound, or rather, the crater that she has in her stomach, he is surprised. He wonders how she is still able to walk like that, and asks her not to resist, since he is going to disinfect it with a bit of vital energy. Upon doing so, Diodora is surprised. She asks if he truly is human. Little does she know, Dolan responds that he would like her to see him as a normal human, although peculiar. After finishing healing her, Diodora confesses that she was crying for the spirits who fell in combat, since none of them deserved to die by someone's hands, and for that reason she thinks about avenging their deaths. Dolan asks her to let him help her, but she only looks at him and says that he is someone a little strange, and after that she leaves. Some time later, Dolan returns with the girls, where Selena takes the opportunity to bring some food. He mentions that Christina ate all of her food in an instant, and it is impressive that despite eating a great deal, she continues to be beautiful. Christina feels a little embarrassed, since she has a lot of difficulty gaining weight. Some people are very lucky, right? Besides that, since she exercises a lot, it does not affect her much. Selena comments that if she looks at her as a woman, she can feel quite envious. However, Phil comments to both of them that the only one who could feel envy there was her, since she is quite flat, while they have a beautiful pair of melons, especially Selena. Even so, Phil asks Dolan to stop staring at them, and Christina comments that he cannot help it since he is at that age, but this is not the moment nor the place. But Dolan says that he was not thinking about anything they are thinking, and sometime after eating, the girls decide to rest, and Selena takes the tray to take it to the kitchen. However, Dolan notices that she is trembling. Sometime later, while everyone is resting, Dolan gets up and observes Selena, who is not sleeping, and because of that, he joins her. He notices that she is still trembling, and she comments that she could not sleep, and simply went out to get a bit of air. Selena mentions that although she barely arrived at this place, it is already her favorite place, and Dolan, upon observing the landscape, is surprised since it is a magnificent view. Selena comments that if one concentrates, they can hear noises in the distance, and Dolan replies that it must be the blacksmiths, since they work all night to leave everything prepared for the next day. Shortly after, he sits beside her and mentions that she is truly right. This is a landscape that purifies the soul. While observing the surroundings, Dolan mentions that people tell him that he is someone very strange, but he does not consider himself someone strange, and she asks why he says that. He tells her that he can notice that she has been very nervous since they arrived at the village after the battle. He involved her in all of this, knowing that she does not know how to fight, and because of that, he wanted to apologize to her. However, she says that he is mistaken, since it is not that she is afraid to fight, but that she could have killed that demon. However, she was not able to do it, despite the fact that many elves and even Eldora herself are injured, even knowing that the demon was someone evil. Even with all of that, she was not able to end a life. She feels that she has to change, because she is a horrible Lamia. But Dolan understands her. He mentions that they thought Lamias were colder, or at least he thought so until he met her. Because if she were like the Lamias told in the tales, he would not have thought of taking her to the village. So he says that it is not necessary for her to change, because he likes the way she is. He hands her a magic crystal. However, he then notices that it has much more energy than a common crystal. Dolan mentions that this one is his favorite, and its method of production is secret. He made it with the objective that it keeps her safe in the battle of the next day. Selena thanks him. When the moment was becoming a little more intense, Christina appears. She throws a blanket so that they do not get cold. Besides that, she feels a little excluded for not having been told anything about that wonderful place, so they invite her to contemplate that wonderful landscape together. At that, Selena stands up determined and tells them that she wants to help Dio, in addition to all the inhabitants of the village. And because of that, they should no longer think about doubting her. And Christina tells her that she will also cut down evil to help everyone. While they talk, Dolan observes for a while, and Selena soon falls asleep. It is then that Christina takes advantage of the moment to ask Dolan if before he had already heard the word superhuman. He, a little confused, comments that he had never heard it before, which makes Christina reply that he simply needs to forget about it. And the next morning, Dio gives a motivational speech to all the inhabitants of the village. Shortly after, they depart toward the demonic portal. However, before that, we see Olivia's strategy. She explains that the demonic portal has a main gate and 3 supports around it: the Elven Warriors and Blake's Beastman squad, and Alcine's Arachnid. They will take care of those gates. Dio's battalion will be the scouts, and the objective is to lead them to the main gate with all of their strength, so that then they can save all the inhabitants of the forest. As they advance, they hear a rumble, and when they go out to observe, they notice the demonic energy of the portal. At that, Selena leaves the carriage and asks the youths to continue without her, since she will stay there for a bit longer in order to help Dio's squad, and Dolan agrees, but asks her not to go too far. As they depart, Selena prepares for her combat. Meanwhile, the demon is waiting impatiently for Dolan, and at that, the inhabitants of the forest begin to arrive at the battlefield. They curse the demons for having disturbed their forest. Golod finds himself impatient, while the demoness becomes excited upon seeing Deodora. She says that no matter how much she begs, she will not think about ending her suffering so easily. On the other hand, Jelen begins to rapidly sweep through the inhabitants of the forest, while Dio orders him to attack from a distance. Although, unfortunately, they are not worthy rivals for Jelen, but, by luck, Selena appears on the battlefield. She buries him with an avalanche, being surprised to see that her own magic is stronger than usual. The elves, upon seeing her, ask what she is doing there, since she was supposed to be at the main gate, but she replies that she left that to Dolan, to Christina. But at that moment, Jelen emerges from the rocks and, upon seeing that it is Selena, comments that it will be worth eating her, although she thinks that she will not let that happen. We then see that Christina is wondering whether Selena is alright, because those demons are very strong, and Dolan replies that it will indeed be a difficult battle, but he wants to support Christina and her efforts to change. Christina can understand that he trusts her, however, she prefers to go back to help her. Although Dolan stops her and reveals that he gave Selena a special magic crystal, and that most likely this crystal will help her a lot in combat. Besides that, Selena is quite strong, and even stronger when she herself believes in it. It is then that they are informed that they are already reaching the main gate, where Golod is dragging everyone else who crosses his path. Enjoying the fervor of the battle, Christina warns Dolan that he must go to the main gate, while she will stay there to take care of that place. Quickly, Christina charges against Golok, and warns that the arachnids will seek a way to escape from there. In order to take as many survivors as they can, Golok becomes excited upon seeing that it is her, calling her superhuman. Although Christina makes him know that she has no time to waste, and awakens her sword power, both begin their battle, fighting fiercely, and Golok acknowledges that she is not bad at all, calling her superhuman once again, although Christina replies that she does not know what he is talking about. It is then that we see Dolan running, thinking that he should not worry about Christina, since if he wants to reduce as much damage as possible, he has to hurry, and because of that he uses his wings to arrive quickly. Diodora, on the other hand, is there eliminating the scouts very quickly, and asks the demoness when she plans to truly face her. She replies that now is a good moment, and creates some roots to trap her inside a dome. Diodora even tries to dissipate the mist that the demoness is releasing, but she begins to counterattack with the vital energy of the beings she absorbed. While cynically asking whether she is enjoying her new little friends, Diodora tries to counterattack, but the demoness can absorb vital energy and use it at the same time. She asks her to try to resist as much as possible, because she wants to enjoy this for as long as possible, making her suffer as much as she can. However, Diodora does not intend to be her toy, and ends up summoning a vine with black roses, which can bewitch everything. She reveals that she had sealed this power, but she is someone so filthy that she does not think of restraining herself. The demoness is surprised to see that she has the same power as her, and screams that it is time to see who absorbs whom first, also chosen in her powers. Although the demoness is superior, and slowly begins to absorb the life from Diodora's body. However, everything was planned by her, since when the energy flows inside her body, she begins to feel intense pain, and her body begins to bloom with stems bearing black roses. She asks herself what is happening, and Diodora reveals that the day before, when she attacked her with the thorn, she planted some black rose seeds inside her. The demoness orders that her life not be drained, because she still lacks absorbing one more life to bloom brilliantly. However, she ends up perishing at the hands of Diodora herself, and the dome then disappears, and she begins to be surrounded by some monsters. In her current state, she cannot defeat anyone. However, before she is sent to see God earlier, Dolan appears and finishes the enemies with a rain of arrows. She is surprised to see Dolan. However, she ends up fainting shortly after, and we see that Selena is impaled in a very bad state. Poor thing. Dolan ends up healing Diodora with a magic circle, and when she awakens she asks what that is. Dolan explains that it is a circle of protection and healing, and within it she will be able to regenerate, in addition to being protected from external threats. Diodora thanks him for his help, and comments that after all he is not human. Dolan replies that he is indeed, he only has the soul of a dragon from his previous life. Diodora replies that she had never met one, and it turns out that now she knows a reincarnated one. She tries to get up since she does not want to waste time. For that very reason, Dolan asks her to keep resting while he goes to fight. She insists on accompanying him. However, Dolan replies that he will feel much better if he faces Goldock on his own. Diodora then wishes him good luck, and asks him not to use his power too much to avoid destroying the forest. Right after that, Dolan flies away. Meanwhile, the elves try to keep Jelen at bay in order to help Selena. They remove the stake that was embedded in her legs, right in the tail, that is, and when they are about to heal her, the crystal that Dolan had given her rapidly heals her wound. Phil is surprised and asks her if by any chance she has healing magic, but they are quickly interrupted and tell Selena that if she continues straight along the path she will leave the forest, and they ask her to leave, not to look back, since she needs to escape that place. Selena almost answers that she will not do that, but Phil says that she does not want her to die. On the other side, we see Christina, who is managing to cut the demon several times. However, he regenerates very quickly, and he congratulates her on the abilities she has as a superhuman. Christina again asks herself what a superhuman is, and he is surprised to see that they are not known in the human kingdom. He explains that superhumans are some monsters who are born from time to time among weak humans. They have more magic, power, and intelligence than the rest of humans. However, they cannot stand seeing people like that among them and end up marginalizing them. Christina remembers what happened when she was younger, and the demon laughs at her, since seeing that sounds quite familiar, revealing that superhumans were their natural enemies, who despite being human have already killed many demons. Even the fallen gods and the strongest ancestral dragon of all also perished to one of these superhumans. Christina then understands that she is one of the people spoken of in a song, and thanks the demon for making her understand that her strength exists to defeat beings like him. It is then that she quickly begins to dismember the monster, who comments on how the dragon must have felt when dying by the hands of such a monster. It is then that she cuts off his head and comments that it is something obvious. The dragon believed that the hero was his friend, and that friend betrayed his trust and certainly hates him for it. On the other hand, Goloth kneels before Dolan and mentions that ever since he saw him fight against the god of war, he always wanted to face him, and Dolan asks him if he dares to challenge him even knowing who he is. Goloth replies that he must do so because he is a spirit obsessed with life and death, and now he is human and his sword can pierce his heart. At that moment, a portal activates, and knowing that Dolan cannot fight freely in these lands, he asks him to enter the portal to take him to the demonic realm. There he will be able to satisfy his desires for battle. And shortly after, while they fall, Goloth welcomes him to his world. There they will be able to give it their all. And then Phil asks Selena to run from the forest. Then she says goodbye to her while she stays there in fear, thinking that she did not want to hurt her enemies, in addition to wanting to flee that place. However, she tries to chase after Phil, but her tail does not respond. She asks herself whether she really does not want to fight, or if she is simply a coward. But Phil and the rest of the elves are there facing the demon, who congratulates them for coordinating very well. But that is not enough to defeat him, and he alters his body, creating several blades to finish everyone off. Selena ends up hearing the cries of pain, and tries to gather courage upon seeing the gem that Dolan gave her, since she knows that the power of love can be very useful. Then she begins to imbue herself with the power of the gem, and we see poor Phil there who is almost about to die. But luckily Selena appears, who with a chain of earth manages to bind him, and tells the elves that she can still fight. The demon becomes excited upon seeing that she returned and advances against her. But Selena with her cursed serpent destroys his weapon. Soon after she lands a blow with her titan fist, and she advises the rest of the elves to leave the area, since there is so much mana there that she herself is afraid. The demon becomes excited and declares that he will fight with everything, overflowing with great demonic energy. However, Selena begins to conjure her magic, and with her cursed gaze manages to paralyze the demon. He cannot believe that he is losing to those malignant eyes of Elamia, and Selena then summons a great number of serpent. The demon manages to break free from his prison to counterattack as best he can. However, Selena increases her power, and the serpents begin to merge to create the form of an ancestral dragon. With a single bite, she makes the enemy disappear, or at least half of him. Phil and Gil are surprised to see that she truly defeated the demon, while Selena rejoices at having defeated him. Meanwhile, in the demonic realm, Dolan comments to Goloth that he does not see any castle nearby, despite it being his territory. He reveals that he has been serving the royal family as a mercenary, and hopes that he will understand his situation. However, Dolan replies that this does not matter to him. He prepares to fight and end all of this quickly, while Goloth becomes excited to be able to face one of the pillars of the 7 dragons of the primordial world. He is the most feared by the evil god. Then he unsheathes his swords, while Dolan comments that he will fulfill his desire for battle, but he will pay for his defeat with the annihilation of his existence. Goloth advances against him. However, Dolan repels him easily. Then he combines his technique of earthly roar and celestial roar to execute his dual path, creating a powerful attack. But Dolan does not care at all. He is not shaken in the slightest. Meanwhile, the elves and Selena head toward the portal, but along the way they encounter Chris and Diodora. Phil asks the girls where Dolan is, and Christina replies that he went first in the direction of the demonic gate. The group quickens their pace, while on the other side, at the demonic portal, Olivia realizes that Dolan went to the demonic world to fight Goloth. Then the leaders of the forest tribes appear, and Olivia comments that it seems Dolan truly went to the demonic world, making the leaders think that this is the perfect opportunity to seal the portal. However, Dolan continues fighting inside, and it would be an act of dishonor to do that, but compared to the lives of the forest inhabitants, it is a price to be paid. but Dolan is there beating Goloth mercilessly. Despite being eager for an unrestrained battle, he is receiving a severe beating. Shortly after, Selena's and Christina's group arrives together with the tribal leaders. They argue with them upon learning that they want to seal the portal, even though Dolan is inside. Phil and Jill tell their father that they cannot do that, but the werewolf, the Arachnidia, and the elf comment that there is no guarantee that another powerful demon will not emerge from the portal, and there is also no guarantee that Dolan will manage to come out alive. However, Selena shouts that this will not happen, because Dolan will certainly win the battle. Christina comments that she also does not believe he will lose, because her instinct tells her so. The leader of the elves comments that this is not very convincing. I agree, but Selena shouts that Dolan is fighting right now, putting his life on the line, and if he did not want to die, he could have simply waited for reinforcements from the kingdom. However, he is not doing that. He is fighting there right now, because he wants to protect the forest. Diodora comments that it is exactly as Selena says, and if they close that gate now, their pride as inhabitants of the forest will be lost forever. And that is even worse than letting the demons destroy them. And the tribal leaders understand and decide to bet everything on Dolan's battle. Meanwhile, he is there calmly, dodging everything that Goloth tries to attack him with. And soon after, he fires a cannon from his mouth. However, at that moment, a strange girl senses the presence of the dragon. Dolan, already bored with the fight, decides to end everything quickly. He then begins to tear the demon apart and then cut him in half, but not before commenting that he was quite brave and resolute, just like the ancient god of war. And from Goloth a tear sprouts, and he comments that this is the highest honor, and then he disappears. Meanwhile, Dolan bids him farewell as the inevitable fallen god of war. But at that moment he is being watched by the girl from before, and she becomes excited upon realizing that she has found him. She is happy knowing that now she will be able to return and play with him. And shortly after, Dolan exits the portal, and Christina, upon seeing him, runs to hug him. After that, they seal the portal and the group returns to the village to celebrate. At night, they prepare a banquet, where Diodora comments to Dolan that it saddens her to see them leave. Then Phil appears and presents the girls wearing elven dancer outfits. Dolan wastes no time and comments that the view is quite pleasant. That is his ultimate reward. And then some forest inhabitants ask Christina to tell them more about herself. They take her with them, and Dolan wastes no time and invites Selena to dance. She takes the opportunity to comment that she was very afraid, and at one point she thought about running away. But Dolan replies that in the end she stayed and fought, and that is her strength. Therefore, she should feel proud of herself. While they dance, he is somewhat trying to confess, although not even Dolan understands what he is doing, and neither does she, but in the end, shortly after, she falls asleep from being drunk on Dolan's legs. However, he hears someone singing in the distance. He heads toward the place to see who is singing, and upon arriving, he notices that it is Christina singing the song of the hero. E is amazed upon hearing her sing and applauds her beautiful song. Christina becomes nervous when she realizes that he was listening, and he asks where she learned that. He becomes quite curious and also asks if there is any more, after the hero defeats the evil dragon, since he would love to hear it if there are more lyrics, although she turns around and apologizes. But the song ends there, where the hero and his group fought alongside the white dragon to defeat the evil dragon. Dolan mentions that it is a shame, and Christina asks him what he thinks happened to the hero and the white dragon in the end. He replies that it does not matter how they ended. Perhaps the white dragon considered his friendship with the hero important, or somehow believes that. The next day Olivia asks Dolan if he is interested in learning at her academy. He replies that he gave himself a little more time to be able to consider it, although he is interested. At that moment Diodora hands him some black rose seeds for him to use as an ingredient in his potion. In addition, she gives him a kiss as a personal gesture of gratitude. Selena, surprised, asks what she is doing with her husband, and feels frustrated because not even she has done that with him yet. Later the boys return to the village and decide to report everything to the chief, once they have left their luggage at home. Shortly after that Dolan heads to his house, but upon opening the door he is pierced from behind. However, very strangely after that Dolan awakens very calmly the next day. He checks his small plantation and meets Selena, who greets him. In a scene change we discover that dragons can be traced back to an origin, and the first of all dragons existed even before the gods, when they appeared and began to harmonize and contend among themselves. The first dragon realized that he was alone, Thus, with jealousy of the gods, he began to dismember himself, creating new dragons. From the limbs was born Leviathan the Eternal. From the tail was born an empire, the destroyer of all things. From the head was born Bahamut the Unlimited. From the eyes was born Ormengander the seer of all peaks and horizons. And from his wings was born Vitra the swiftest of all. From his fangs was also born Alexander the Impenetrable. And then came this one, the fiercest of all. There was born the one who reigned supremely among all dragons, who is none other than Dolan himself. He is found telling his own story to the village children. And when he finishes, Dora asks if he always tells this kind of story to children. Dolan replies that he used to invent them for his little brother, but now the little ones always seek him out for stories. A little later, the boys stroll through the village, which is very lively, since all the inhabitants of the forest have begun to visit the place, because they are very grateful to Dolan, since he gave them the opportunity to trade. In addition, they are the heroes who defeated the demonic knights, and everyone in the forest is eager to meet them. At that moment, Christina's fans try to stay with her, although Dora says it will be at another time, and tells Christina that although she is quite imposing in combat, after everything she has a serene side. At that moment, Selena interrupts and asks her to stop bothering her, but she ends up falling for the sweet aroma of Diodora's roses. Later, the boys go to drink milk and eat something. Then Selena asks Dolan if he would like to accompany her to go out hunting something with Balan's team, although Dolan replies that if she will be present, it is not necessary for him to accompany them. The girl is quite clever, and she says that she has already taken milk from him, and therefore it can be said that she obtained the reward and now should assist them. Poor Dolan falls for it completely, and later in the afternoon he joins the team. Selena uses her serpent to make the armored bears leave their hiding place, while Balan's team eliminates them easily. Dolan intervenes to stop them because these monsters are not attacking anyone, and they have already resolved the forest anomaly. They can then return to their homes. However, this is seen as an inconvenience by the soldier. Balan shouts not to care about where the monsters live, because they are still monsters that could attack the village at any moment. The team moves on to continue the hunt, while Dolan wonders how they can take a life that does not need to be taken. Selena, with a gloomy appearance, says that it is not necessary to think too much, since unlike her, these monsters are uglier. Then in another scene change, we see Dolan noticing that his field is withering. However, at that moment, the red-haired girl appears, asking what he is doing looking at the field, since he is very close to leaving the village. Dolan, curious, asks what she is referring to. She replies that he certainly does not know because he does not spend much time in the village, but it was a decision that Mr. Muggle made, and she does not know very well. But she has understood that each of the inhabitants must find a place that accepts them. Dolan says that this is something unacceptable, although the little girl recommends that he not get angry. After all, the entire village agrees with this. Both Muggle and Balan explained everything to the villagers during the night, and Dolan runs quickly to meet with the village leaders, where they ask him if he really intends to leave the village, and he makes it clear that he disagrees with this decision, because even if they leave the village, that does not mean that they will be able to find a place where they can be accepted easily. They ended up separating many of them. Firmly, he tells them that he is completely against it, but Muggle lets them know that they cannot expect to prosper in that place, and confesses that he is already fed up with that village. Dolan tells him that all of them loved the village, although the rest of the council and the elder let him know that this is only his perspective, because they themselves are already tired. Dolan cannot believe what he hears, and the next day he says goodbye to the first ones to leave, although he notices that they act with rejection toward him. And later all the others begin to leave, and his parents along with his younger brother ask him if he is sure about the decision to stay in that abandoned village. Dolan replies that he wants to protect it, and his mother hugs him before leaving. He whispers that he is not a normal child, and that is why he will be fine on his own. After that they leave, and Christina comments to him that he is quite stubborn, and also a little pathetic for wanting to stay there alone. Dolan begins to wander through the village, and when he arrives at Selena's house, he notices that she is cooking. Selena serves him some soup, and she mentions that she made it with Mio's milk. And while they eat, Dolan notices that her shelves are empty, and when he asks what happened, she tries to say something, but they are interrupted by a large explosion at Dolan's house. They run to the place, and upon arriving they meet Christina. She mentions that they should not worry, because she is just watching the house burn from that spot. And Dolan is shocked and asks if it was she who set the fire. She confesses that it was indeed her and everyone present, since it might be that he insisted on staying because he had a house. so they decided to eliminate it, and she is willing to burn his field as well, so that he has nothing that binds him to that place. Dolan stops her and asks why she is doing all this. Everything is very strange. He asks Selena to say something, although she reveals that she is also leaving the village. Dolan cannot understand why she also wants to do that, since they fought together to protect and live in that place. He begs her to stay with him, but Christina asks him to stop, and with a dark attitude lets him know that they do not want to live with him, because he is the furthest thing from a human being, and when someone like him interferes in their lives, those people will always be in danger. Dolan, frightened, asks himself where he went wrong, and feels as if he were sinking into an abyss. For 16 years he thought that he was protecting the village, and wonders when everything changed. In his head only negative words echo. At one moment they tell him that perhaps he wanted to live like a human, but humans in reality do not like him, and that he only took advantage of his friend to say goodbye to the world. After all, he is just someone narrow-minded, and it is regrettable that he is so alone. At that moment Dolan opens his eyes and observes that he is at the volcano where he used to live. He notices that he does not have the hero's wounds, and frightened he asks himself if perhaps his 16 years of life were nothing more than a dream. The voice in his head tells him that he is not human. He is only the protector of humanity and of all who live. That is the only role he must play, and Dolan finds himself reluctant to accept it. But then he hears Selena's voice, surprised to see a dragon for the first time. The voice in Dolan's head is surprised and asks Selena how the hell she got there. Dolan recognizes Selena, and she recognizes that the dragon before her is Dolan. The voice shouts for him to stop, and in a moment everything becomes clearer. Dolan asks why she went there, and Selena replies that when she went to sleep she could only think that she needed to see him when dawn came. Suddenly she appeared there, and she reveals that when she met him for the first time she realized who he was, and when they silenced the spirit of the earth and had soup together. Thanks to him the villagers welcomed her with open arms, and when she was anxious he always encouraged her. She tells everything they lived through together, all the adventures defeating formidable enemies, and his name is Dolan of the village of Bern. Someone kind and strong, but who cannot be alone. She asks him to lift her up, and as she climbs onto his arm she jumps to hug him, thanking him for having found her. Although it is Dolan who thanks her for having saved him, Selene feels embarrassed and mentions that it is very strange to feel sleepy, despite being in a dream. Dolan replies that she should not worry because when she wakes up it will certainly be morning. After that she says goodbye and ends up disappearing. And once she leaves, Dolan apologizes for making the unknown one wait. She replies that it is not fair that that little girl turned upside down everything he had achieved. Dolan replies that Selene is his best friend, and asks her what the hell she wants, because she would not call the relationship he has with her an old friendship, calling her the great goddess of destruction and forgetting, and also his nemesis. Her name is Alcaravis, and she never imagined that she would give him this nightmare. She reveals that she traveled a long path to kill him once again, and Dolan comments that she showed him a true nightmare. Alcaravis replies that she had to do this because he used the hero to abandon his life as a dragon, and all the people, gods, and the rest of the dragons ended up abandoning her as well. So it is not fair that he can live his life so carefree. Dolan replies that she has a good point and that he had renounced living, but it is no longer like before, because when he was reborn as a human, his parents and his entire village made him realize that he was not prepared to live when he was a dragon. She cannot understand what he is saying, but Dolan only tells her that being prepared means making a promise to oneself. This is a promise to never retreat, no matter the difficulties. Alcaravis asks what the hell he promised himself, and Dolan lets her know that he intends to live his life to the fullest as a human, with the soul of a dragon, and is not willing to retreat. Alcaravis replies that this is great, but now he finds himself in her world, and she does not intend to let him return so easily. She ends up summoning the evil dragon that had given him many problems, an ancient hero. However, Dolan no longer wants games, and with a single command to keep quiet sends them flying high above. He lets her know that even if it had been a joke, being subjected to that spectacle is something unbearable. Alcaravis panics and asks him to stop, but she ends up receiving a blow right to the face from Dolan, and then she begins to complain because she did not expect him to be so strong after being reborn. Dolan comments that after the nightmare she made him have, it is hard not to want to wipe out her kind. However, the strength that he possesses in this life can inspire, because his soul can deteriorate and then be reborn as something else once again. And she mentions that perhaps this was a curse imposed by the evil gods. since now he finds himself under a cruel reincarnation curse. What awaits him at the end of his reincarnation will be the complete annihilation of his soul, since little by little it deteriorates. Alkaravis understands that Dolan will disappear one way or another without her interference, but she thinks that this is something very cruel, since in the end she considers him a friend, and what a beautiful friendship they have, right? Dolan replies that she is an evil goddess who committed unimaginable evils. However, despite everything at the same time, she has been an irreplaceable enemy to him, and in fact he considers her a friend, and she becomes a little happier and says goodbye to Dolan and warns him that she will return to visit him, thus ending the nightmare imposed by her. Upon waking, the seamstress greets Selena at the window and Dolan comments that he had a nightmare, or rather a dream, quite exhausting that night. Out of curiosity, he asks what she would do if she encountered an armored bear while hunting. Selena replies that she would send it back home with an evil look, since it would be very dangerous for both sides to fight. Dolan just laughs quietly, and after some time he meets with Christina at the tavern, where Dolan comments to Christina that he was thinking about attending the Academy of Magic of Gallios. He reveals that he had a dream that made him change his mind, a dream in which the village ceased to exist, and it was something extremely vivid. And he does not want that village to cease to exist, since all the people he cares about are there. It was at that moment that he remembered what Mr. Denzel said to him. To protect the village, perhaps he would have to leave it once, and he confesses that he wants to acquire new knowledge and, in this way, rethink the village, studying at the Academy of Magic, because he believes that he will be able to make the village a much happier place. He asks what she thinks, and she replies that it is a very good idea, and that she is very happy to be able to share the place of learning with friends like him. However, while they talk, Selena is feeling very sad, and some time later, Dolan prepares to leave for the exam. He wakes up everyone in the village, and we then see him arriving in the capital. As he looks at his exam sheet, the corpse remarks that these solutions are generations old and asks if he's sure he can solve them. However, he just asks what the hell she's doing in that place, and she says it's for love, although she then says it's just a joke and starts rubbing against Dolan, while letting him know that he will pass with honors. After all, he is an ancient dragon who had fallen asleep after finishing the exam. Dolan replies that he's just meditating, and at that moment the teacher asks how he dares to sleep during the exam and approaches to take his sheet, warning that he will see his skills in the practical tests the next day. He then expects him to do his best without regrets. Meanwhile, the group goes hunting, commenting that Dolan must be taking his exam, though they end up arguing for no reason. Balin stops them and warns Christina that she's falling behind, but she's lost in her thoughts and gets confused, thinking there are monsters, and ends up summoning her cursed serpent, causing damage to the allies. She apologizes to the group, while someone mentions that Selena has been quite depressed since Dolan left. They think that if Dolan going to the Academy of Magic has such an impact, she should have gone with him. However, the little girl reminds them that Lamias are demons who originally could eat people. She recalls that when she was in Galos, people were afraid of her when she walked through the streets, and it's very difficult for her to go to the Academy in that situation. And if Dolan goes to the Academy, he won't return for 2 years, or he could even go straight to work in the city. So they ask if she agrees with that, but the little girl just blushes and yells at him to shut up. At night, when Selena returns home, she thinks that thanks to Dolan's help, she can now read an illustrated book like that on her own. She mentions that she would love to go to the academy with him, but remembers the moment when she was treated like a horrible monster in the city. She knows she would only hinder his dreams if she went with him, and feels that she needs to accept that. After all, she was on a journey to find a husband, so she needs to find one and make him go with her to the Lamia village. That is the tradition. While looking at the book, she remembers when she met Dolan. She finally realizes that she loves him and wants him to be her husband, and to go with her to the Lamia village. However, she also wants him to value her feelings for the village and cannot allow her selfishness to get in the way. But she feels that becoming his wife would be her greatest happiness. While packing her bag, she comments that being in the village was a lot of fun. Meanwhile, Dolan meets with Denzel, who congratulates him for finishing his exam so quickly. However, while they are talking, Dolan interrupts him and asks a question. In a scene change, we see him returning quickly to the village, straight to Selena's house. But when he knocks on the door and sees no one coming out, he decides to enter and finds 2 letters. One for the villagers and one for Dolan. Upon reading it, she is lamenting leaving the village out of nowhere, but seeing Dolan working so hard motivated her to give her best as well, and now she wants to continue her journey to find a husband. Dolan leaves the letter and goes after Selena. Meanwhile, in his mind, He can only think that Selena thought that if they saw each other face to face, it would be too difficult to manage. So she preferred to leave a letter thanking him for everything. She lets him know that she was happy to live in the village and to have met him, signing the letter, "To my beloved Dolan, from your Selena." Dolan runs after her, and, as he leaps, he transforms into a dragon while shouting Selena's name. At night, she lies down to rest, but is startled to see a very strange man, as she had never seen anything like it before, and wonders if they are demons. However, she thinks the doors have already been closed, so she imagines it might be the dragon Dolan was talking about, although she is interrupted by Dolan himself, which makes her scream to the sky. Later, as they walk, they arrive at the clearing, the same place where they first met. Dolan comments that she looked very beautiful with her seductive dance, and Selena asks if he is insulting her. At that moment, they observe the lake, surprised to see so many earth spirits, but the lizard men haven't returned yet, and Dolan explains to Selena that emigrating is not an easy matter. She comments that they have known each other for a short time, but it feels as if she has already spent an eternity with him. He feels the same way, and Selena feels very happy to have met him. And while thinking about this, Dolan interrupts, apologizing for having decided to go to the academy on his own, and that he should have also given himself more time to explain everything properly. She replies that she also tried to leave Yuden in secret, and at that moment, Dolan reveals that he asked Udenzel if students can bring their family members, suggesting that he first needs to form a contract with her, but that he can bring her to the academy, even though she's a monster. He asks if she would like to go with him, and Selena becomes emotional at the thought of being able to continue with Dolan. But she replies that she doesn't know, because Lamias are monsters that eat humans. So what would the people in the city think if he walked around with a monster? What would the students and teachers think? She knows they would look at her with disgust, and that she couldn't make friends. But Dolan tries to say that if anyone speaks badly of her, he will intervene. At that moment, they stumble and fall into the lake. Meanwhile, Selena tells him that he will become a great wizard, a noble person who will be able to protect the village, and that this means he can't cause trouble and can't take her with him. He responds that if there's any problem, he can solve it together with her, and that he doesn't care if he has no friends at the academy, because he wants to see a new world together with her. Selena cries and ends up accepting his proposal, confessing that she also wants to go with him. The next day, the exam results arrive, and Dolan becomes emotional when he sees that he truly passed. After that, they gather with the group in the village, which carries out the contract between Dolan and Selena, making her his familiar. Some time later, the young people prepare to depart, and all the villagers gather to say goodbye. The village chief asks Christina to take good care of Dolan and Selena, as they will be under her responsibility. At that moment, she informs Selena that she will also go to the academy next year, asking her to take good care of Dolan until then. Dolan announces that it's time to say goodbye and thanks everyone for coming. Shortly after, they depart. They say that if anything happens in the village, it's just a matter of running to the academy, but they ask that everyone take care of themselves until their return. Later, Christina says that once they arrive in Gallius, they will be very busy preparing for the academy, so they won't have time to be sad. Selena asks if the people at the academy are friendly, or if there's anyone terrifying, like in the higher level courses. Christina assures her that she doesn't need to worry, because if anyone bothers her, she won't allow it. Selena becomes emotional, as her new life alongside Dolan begins, being able to be with him all the time. She thinks that this basically feels like a dream, and that now they are basically married. But then she remembers that Dolan at the lake said he wanted to see a new world together with her, and wonders if that wasn't just a confusion of love. She's still wondering. Obviously it is. Realizing that she's thinking nonsense, she becomes sad again, and Dolan comments that he would love to visit her village someday, and hopes that by then she won't be upset and will stay by his side. And so ends our story. This anime is really fun and interesting, and I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and comment down below if you could have the soul of some absurd monster. Which type would you choose? I would want the soul of a giant. I think that's really cool. Anyway, God bless, thanks, see you, and until the next video.